This is Gary Hartley by the chalkboard. My guest today, coming in from Ketchikan, Alaska, is Clint McClennan. Clint, welcome.
Hi, Gary. Thanks for having me.
And I am so glad to talk to you again. You and I
Yeah,
saw each other in August when I was up there
yeah,
visiting, Ketchikan being my hometown.
yeah.
And you and I have a lot of history together. And I
That was
thought
great to catch up with you.
I had to bring you on and have a good conversation with you
Yeah,
here that we can share with other people, because last time I was there, we had a great conversation just with you and me out at the lake.
right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for listeners, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you would want them to know, what you're doing, family, and
Yeah.
and
So, obviously, I've lived in Alaska a long time. I've lived a couple other places. We'll probably talk a little bit about that. But right now, I'm a teacher at K High, our alma mater, at Ketchikan High School, and I'm teaching automotive classes from beginning to advanced, and even an introductory one for new drivers, a class I developed called CarWise. And I also teach an advisory class, which is we take students from freshmen all the way through to graduation. I have the same students, about 20 of them, and we teach them daily living skills, everything from loans to how to get an apartment to how to succeed in college to how to prepare for the military, just all the different avenues that they're trying to pursue. And that's part of it also, is trying to help them figure out what they want to do. And so that's what I'm doing right now. I have 6 children, 4 that I married into. My wife was a widow when I met her, Chrissy, and we had 2 more together. Who one of them, my son Brian, just graduated from college. He played college football in Kansas City. And then my daughter Sarah, who I'm very proud of as well, the youngest, and she is getting ready to graduate from Gonzaga in the next few months. So, and she's pursuing, what is she doing? Engineering. So she's graduating with an engineering degree. So I have 9 grandchildren who I just absolutely adore. And I would say that they're a lot more fun than your own kids by a long shot. So I highly recommend grandchildren.
nice. Now, since you're teaching auto mechanics, that was not something you really pursued, is it?
Well, not to teach. No, that was a really interesting twist how I ended up there. And the ironic part was I never finished my college degree. I'm one semester away from finishing a degree in English. And it once I got married and we actually moved down for 9 months, I moved 4 kids and a pregnant wife, and went to Southern Oregon University for a year because it looked like I was going to be able to finish my degree. And then my plan was to come back up and teach English at the high school. And I never got it done. And with another child on the way after that one we went down with, it just didn't make sense for me to pursue that. I was able to do other things. I've always been really entrepreneurial. So I started a business that did really well. And we could talk about both of those, a couple, 2 or 3 businesses that I've started and built up and sold. But I reached the point, it was interesting. Like I said, I had never finished college, and I was just having a conversation. My son Brian was a senior, beginning of his senior year, and he was getting football scholarship opportunities. And he was just thinking, Dad, I don't know if I really want to go to college. And I told him, well, I never finished, and it hasn't stopped me from becoming doing really well in business, but it has along the way caused some problems for me that I didn't have a college degree. And I told him, you never know when you'll need it. So that was the beginning of his senior year. And in December, their auto shop teacher was killed in a car accident during Christmas break. And so their class was kind of sitting in limbo with no one to teach it. And they were in the library for 2 weeks. And he'd come home and complain about it every night because it's a 2-hour class, which is a long time to sit in a library. And so my company at the time was doing really well. I incorporated a business, and we were in 3 or 4 different cities. And I just had a great team. And I had told my wife earlier, I felt like I was more of a PR guy, really. I just had such a wonderful team. I built a great company, and it almost ran as smooth when I wasn't there. So I just told her, I think I'm going to see if they'll let me substitute for a few weeks in there and just give those kids a break. So I went and talked to the administration, and before I even finished the sentence, they were handing me a set of keys. so, so I was in, and um, I just absolutely, I forgot how much I enjoyed being around young adults, teenagers. And I'd been a youth pastor for several years. Another thing I did, part of a story, hopefully we'll touch on. And I'd forgotten how much I enjoyed being around young people. So I was in that class a few weeks, and I was thinking, okay, this is the last couple days. And a couple of the administrators came in and said, Clint, we'd really like it if you could stay a few more weeks. And I said, well, gosh, that would be great. I'd love to. Let me, check and see. So at our company morning meeting, I just said, you guys are doing great. I'm able to put in a few hours in the morning, a few hours at night, and everything's running smoothly. How do you feel about it? And like I said, I have such a great team, and they all said, no problem. That's fine. So I finished that 2 weeks turned into another month, and they asked me to finish out the year. And then they asked me to come back. And so the amazing thing was I didn't have my teaching credentials. And since I didn't have a 4-year degree, I looked into what it would take to finish that. And of course, you could do it online, but then you need a year of student teaching. And by that time, they would have someone else in the shop already. So I kind of thought I missed that situation. And after I told my son, Brian, see, this is why. Look what's happening here. So anyway, I was teaching in the class one day or out in the shop how to do something. And the administration, a couple of them came in, the superintendent and another fellow I'd never seen before. And they hadn't told me they were coming in, and we were doing something on a car, and I was instructing them. And then I stepped back and allowed them to dive in and finish this job out. And turns out that was the president of the teaching, what was it? The Board of Education for the state of Alaska. And so they met with me afterwards and said that, you came really strongly recommended for us to give you a waiver, what they call a type M exemption. And they gave me my teaching credentials. So I have a teaching certificate just like every other teacher has. And that was I was really incredibly blessed by that, because I thought, here's something. I tease because I've done really well in my company, and well, all of them did well, but this particular one I did really well with. And I tease because I said, I know how to make money. I want to make a difference. And that's exactly what I've had the opportunity to do. So I feel really blessed. And I've been there now this is my 6th year, which I was looking at all my teachers, the calendars I filled out, my teacher's log, and I couldn't believe it that I had 6 of them already. It's like, wow, that's amazing. It's gone by fast. And of course, this year's had its challenges, but it's still those young people, and they still keep you on your toes. And it's to make an impact in their life is humbling. I'm grateful to be there. So, yeah.
Well, I think it's great that the auto mechanics class is still there, because those are
Yeah.
disappearing in schools down here.
Yeah.
And to have
Very
that up
much
there.
so. Yeah. And it's sad because there's a national shortage right now. Every mechanic shop in Ketchikan is shorthanded. They need mechanics. So I'm constantly getting phone calls from the different shops saying, do you have any students that are ready to graduate that are good enough to start working? And one of the shops I help with up here, I even made a phone call to UTI, a training Universal Technical Institute in Arizona there. And I've sent several students through there, but I called there to say they're recruiting to say, hey, do you have any students that are getting ready to graduate that need, that would be willing to move to Alaska? And they just said, no, they're all placed. They said, we have a waiting list over 100 students they're waiting for. So they have a 2-year, job supply for people that want to do auto mechanics, and they're making really good money. So I broadened the program out. When I stepped in, it was more certifications. A lot of it was online. They were watching these little videos, answering these questions, and getting these certificates. And while that made the school look really good, and it opened the door for a lot of financial opportunities for the school and grants and whatnot, the students really couldn't do much in the shop. And I was just astounded that they didn't know how to do some of the basic stuffs, but they had all these certifications. So I have changed it quite a bit. We still have a really high competency level of mechanics in there, but I stretched it out to reach into aviation. So we go and work with a couple of the aviation shops in town here and help put an engine on a Beaver last year, and just got to observe lots of different things that they're doing. And it's also opened up into an apprenticeship program where I can feed about 1 or 2 students a year right into an apprenticeship program in the aviation field, where they work for a couple of years there, or 3 years, and then they go 2 weeks south to get their AP certification, aircraft and power plant, which is a big deal. And they can work wherever they want in the world, helicopters, aircrafts, jets. So it's a pretty good program. We also ended up working with a Marine outfit as well. And then let's see what else we do. Marine diesel. The college started a course for our students. They'll take 12 of our students, and it's after school and a weekend course, and they learn all about marine diesels, and they get a college credit for it. So we spread it out to be outboards, marine diesels, aviation, and of course, automotive. And so I don't focus as hard. They were basically cranking out service station type mechanics that could go right to work at a service station. And the criticism was that in like 8 years, they'd only had 1 student that worked at a service station. So I broadened it out, and I said, well, my thought is to really get them to love working on things, mechanical things, find out what their niche is, boats, planes, whatever it's going to be. I said, and then I help steer them towards the right kind of training program for them to get the training they need in that area. And it's made a big difference in the school. And yes, I travel around, and even in our state, a lot of the programs are closing down. Even the capital city, Juneau, they don't even have a garage to work in anymore. So their auto shop program is in a classroom with whatever that poor teacher can drag in there to teach them with. So I am blessed. We have 4 lifts and a massive shop, lots of really good equipment, and the support of our school district and the community. So it's good. I'm enjoying it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Now, you talked about being in business. So you had more than one business. I remember you had a greenhouse business there in Ketchikan. And I know you had, I think it was a
Sorry
bug.
about that. I lost audio on you for a minute.
You got me now?
I got you. Sorry.
That's all right. No, I was talking about you being in business, and I remember you having a plant business there, a greenhouse in Ketchikan.
Yeah, we had a garden center. That was let's see, I had a body shop for a number of years that I kind of did on the side while I was working in ministry at a church, working with a youth group. And then, yeah, we bought and moved and expanded a little Ma and Pa garden center that's still doing really well here in Ketchikan. That was a fun experience. Yeah.
Yeah. I have to say this, because you've been doing auto mechanics for a long time, because you painted my truck when I was a senior. Do you
That's
remember
right.
that?
I remember that. I do remember that now. Yeah.
Yeah. I talked my parents into it. I said, I got to get my truck painted. It's rusting, and Clint will do it. And you did. And it was all nice and shiny and white.
Oh, it came out nice. That's right. I remember that.
Yeah, it did. So you have a lot of experience in that. You've been doing it for a very long time. So,
yes.
So you had the greenhouse business, and what else did you get into?
So then, let's see, I bought a small pest control company here in Ketchikan, and Ketchikan Pest Control. It'd been in business for like 20 years, and I incorporated it and moved it into Sitka, Juneau, and we were basically working in every city in Southeast. So, And that was a phenomenal opportunity. People hear the word pest control and they go, ooh, it's icky. And it really wasn't. It's a nice mixture of science, a lot of science, figuring out the different chemicals you use. And of course, I was really dedicated to using as much green-based product and very safe products. Being a family man, I wouldn't bring anything into anyone's home that I wouldn't use in my own. And it was just a great opportunity. I did that for 10 years, and it started with just me and the truck when I bought the company. And then it grew significantly to the point where I think we had, I want to say there was like 15 employees, and we were in Juneau, Sitka, and Ketchikan were our main hubs. And then we were versatile. We were able to fly anywhere or boat anywhere, whatever we needed to help people with different things. And of course, at that time, that's when the whole bed bug epidemic struck. And right when I bought the company, within months, and we hadn't had a bed bug resurgence in America since World War II, when DDT did a great job getting rid of it. But of course, DDT, they were spraying it at like 4,500 gallons every 10 miles down the highway. And you overload, you introduce anything into the environment, and that was it's going to be a staggering effect. And that's what happened. They outlawed it, and bed bugs made a big comeback. And so I helped in the state in a lot of different areas with public health, with the Alaska State Ferries, with the governor, writing protocol and for safety and verbiage. And gosh, I ended up in court several times testifying. I did a lot of different things with bed bugs, and that was a whole new introduction. It was pretty amazing deal. So anyway, the company grew and grew. And like I said, I woke up one day and I just didn't really have a vision for it anymore, and it was growing a little faster than I wanted it to. I was putting in like 70-hour work weeks, and I just didn't want to do it, and the opportunity came up to teach, and I took it. But it's kind of fun for me to look back all the different businesses that I've owned and run. They're still operating today, which is fun when you think about it, that was a good idea, that I had a part to play in setting them up and leaving them in really good shape, and so, yeah, I feel really blessed to have had all those opportunities that I've had, for sure.
So what are the top pests that you treated for up there?
Well, up here, the Norway rat was a big one. We did lots of rodent work. So we had 300 or 400 bait stations with poison in them hidden all over town that the city pays for. And then we also did, private work for different businesses and stuff. So we did a lot of rodent work. I would say we would kill on an average of 300 to 500 rats a month just in Ketchikan. And in Juneau, their problem wasn't rats, it was mice. And same thing, we killed hundreds and hundreds a month. And I remember when I was purchasing the company and I was looking at these records, and I was talking to the guy and I said, what are we going to do when we kill all the rats off? And he says, Clint, you got to understand, these are Norway rats. They came here, immigrated on the ships, came with the ships, and they've been here ever since. And he says, and you're not going to get rid of them all. And he wasn't kidding. So Norway rats, rodents, and then carpenter ants, lots of carpenter ants, and they do a lot of damage to houses. And yeah, those were the main ones. And then there's lice and fleas and little things. Spiders, I literally made millions of dollars killing spiders. I tease. It seemed so funny to me that people would get so carried away over something so small, but they really would get excited about that, so but like I said, it was a good company. And at first it was kind of humbling for me because people kind of tease, oh, you're doing pest control, oh, you're the bug man, and that was kind of my name. And when I was buying it, the owner, I was telling him, how do you deal with that, getting teased like that? He goes, Clint, I just look at him and smile and go, oh yeah. And he says, I'm looking at him going, I'm going to make more today than you're going to make in the whole month. And he says, he just said, I just thought that to myself, and it made it okay. But it gave me a good opportunity to build a good community within my company. I did a lot of things different. My biggest competitor was up in Juneau, up in Anchorage, and he and I got to be really close friends. And he has a different model for business. He pays them next to nothing and has to do lots of training to keep them trained. And I didn't have to do that. I was able to keep my employees for several years. I took them to the different trade shows with me, made a trip out of it. And he just thought I was out of my mind. But I would keep an employee on an average of 3 to 4 years, which is good in that industry. And he would keep them for 6 to 8 months and grab another one, but we had a meeting every morning. And I would always start out with a verse out of the Bible and a thought, and then we would pray together. And it was funny, when I was hiring people, they didn't have to be Christians for me to hire them, but I would tell them right away, I want you to understand that we do this every morning. And so they would just say, well, am I getting paid? And I said, you sure are. You punch in and you're there. They said, well, I don't care. That's fine. And Gary, it was amazing, because as we did that, I didn't make them ever pray or anything. But after about 3 or 4 months, they started joining in. They started saying, hey, can we pray for my grandma? This is happening, or whatever. And then I did things, I always had a big slogan written across the wall in our business, saying, we get to be heroes today for someone, and teaching them to have empathy was the hardest part. They were thinking, okay, go in there, spray for these fleas, and leave. And I'm telling them, no, these people have been up all night. They're a little freaked out. They need someone to comfort them a little and say, hey, it's going to be all right. We got this. I said, and you need to take a few minutes and do that. So we would write it right in the schedule. I would write it right in the schedule that they had an extra 15 or so minutes to just slow down and connect with that person. And it got to be a really great experience for them. And my employees, I put a lot of effort into them. All of them, I would start saying, what are your plans for what's your 5-year plan? And they'd look at me like, what? And that would be something we'd work on. I ended up with an office manager, and she was incredible, completely untrained, but she just learned and was so smart and great with the books. So I paid for her to take some classes on accounting and stuff. And I knew eventually she was going to be worth more than I was willing to pay her, that she could get a really good job somewhere else. But to me, that was important, that they understood that I cared about them, and I authentically did. So getting the opportunity, when you own the company, you get to make all those kind of decisions about what you want your company to look like. So ours was just a really strong, great work atmosphere. And also every one of my employees understood that I expected them to be improving on themselves, in their area of interest. And it was good. So I really enjoyed it. And I still hear from several of them. They'll still send me Christmas cards or whatever that worked for me a decade ago, so it's good.
Yeah, when you're an employer and you value your employees that way, and you teach them to value other people that way,
Yeah.
it opens up amazing things in your life, in their lives, and in the lives of all your customers, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sure does. Yeah.
That's really amazing. I worked for an engineering firm down here for 7 or 8 years, and the owner of the company was like that. Just this
Yeah.
really strong Christian man with really strong values, valued everyone, knew everyone, even though we had hundreds of people in the company.
Yeah.
Just here in Abilene. He knew our names. He knew my name the first time I met him. I introduced myself. He knew who I was. Like,
Yeah.
how did you know who I was? But it just made the whole atmosphere completely different than other places I had worked in my career.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you take that value, you took that value of in your life, and you extended that to your employees, but you've also spent time as a youth minister doing the same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. And that's kind of part of my testimony. If you'll let me indulge a little bit, I had, led my life. Even in high school, I lived pretty hard. And I had been raised, I knew about the Bible. I knew about the things of God. I'd gone to a private Christian school until I was in a freshman. So when I got to K High, it was like this whole new world opened up to me, and I just dove right in and couldn't run fast enough away from the things of the Lord, which I did. And by the time I was 21, I'd run my life right into the ground, and I was down at a friend's in San Diego, and I was just at the end of my rope, And I'll never forget it because I was down there picking up a car that I bought and it wasn't ready to be picked up. And I needed a place to stay. So I called this friend who used to be the pastor of Clover Pass up here, Arnie Halverson. And it was really interesting because he said, well, yeah, you could stay with us, but if you're going to stay here, you have to go to church with us. And of course, I'm like, all right, okay, I'll go to church with you. And the ironic thing was I'd go out Saturday night with friends and stuff, people I just met, and we go down to Tijuana. And I don't even know how I made it home half the time. And then I'd wake up Sunday morning, after 2-3 hours of sleep. And he's, come on, time to go to church. And so I thought, I'm just gonna, and on the way down, he says, there's this college and career group, these young adults that meet at the same time. If you'd like to meet with them, you can. I said, well, that sounds wonderful. Okay, let's do that. So I'm thinking in the back of my head, okay, they're going to go into their church. I'm going to double back around and take a nap in the lawn right next to the car here. This sounds great under this palm tree, San Diego, sunny. Well, Arnie was a little smarter than that. And even though the hallways were all outdoor, he's like, oh yeah, keep going right down there. Yep, that's it. Well, Gary, I got to tell you, they had a greeter meet me at the door, and the way they did it, the greeter accompanied you in. So he accompanies me in and starts introducing me and stuff. And when I walked in that room, Gary, something happened to me that changed me forever. Those people loved God and they loved each other, and it just freaked me out. There was about 100 of them in there, this young adults group, and I just never seen anything like that before. And the real thing was the condition of my heart. I wasn't ready to hear that or to see that. But when I was, and I saw it, I was changed. I was so freaked out. And of course, I stayed for that service. I can't tell you what the pastor said, but it just freaked me out. The time of worship, what they talked about. And I was familiar with all the jargon and the lingo. I'd heard it all before, but I'd never seen it like that, So we went, I went back home, and that night I laid in bed and I couldn't go to sleep. I was staring at the ceiling. I'll never forget it. And it was like my whole life, I finally understood that I was selfish, that I was, sin is selfishness. It's actually, sin is treason against God. It's treason is what it is. And I started realizing that. And then I realized I didn't feel condemnation. I knew that God loved me. And I was just overwhelmed by God's love. And I woke up the next morning, and I prayed. I just said, God, I want to live how you want me to live, but I need your help, And I woke up that next morning, Gary, and I was a completely different guy, completely different guy. I couldn't get enough of hanging out with God's people, reading the Bible, learning about him, and just spending time alone. And for the next 9 months, I stayed down there and worked. And I worked out in a place called Borrego Springs, which is right below Palm Springs. So I was working out in the desert, cleaning and servicing, fixing swimming pool equipment. So I was by myself all day out in the desert. And it was therapeutic, to put it lightly. But God just used that time to really grow in my life. And then I knew after 9 months of being down there that I needed to come back and make things right with my family and a bunch of my friends. And my family had really been through the ringer. My mom was just so worried about me all the time. And so I thought, I'm just going to come back to Ketchikan, hang out up here. And so I got back here, and one of the things my friend Arnie told me is you can't just hang around with your friends like you used to. You're different, and they're going to be doing things that you're not going to be, it's not going to work for you. And he warned me, and he was right. And most of my friends turned their back on me and most of it was they just felt convicted. I wasn't saying a lot, but they just had heard Clint turned into this religious guy. And that was really hard, Gary, because I valued those friendships a lot. And, but it's been amazing over time. Most of them, have come back. Most of them, we have a great relationship now. And one of them, especially just in the last few months, had kind of a, I guess, a crisis in his life. And exactly what happened to me just happened to him. So you can call it born again, you can call it saved, you can call it what you want, but that was an amazing thing. And then So I just started helping out around the church, doing whatever. And there was no youth pastor there. So I just said, well, I can take them. We can go hike Deer Mountain and do some fun things. And I'll just share with them what I know. I don't know a lot yet, but and that led to a couple years, and then led to me going through a licensing class and being the youth pastor at Clover Pass for several years. And that was a great experience for me. So, and I did, right before I plugged in there, I did head back down to San Diego, and I went to college for another year at a Bible college and got some formal training and stuff as well to go along with, my own studies. So, and then I came back and worked at Clover Pass for several years, a decade, something like that. So yeah, really good times. And yeah, so my testimony is this: God isn't angry. God's not angry at you, and he loves you. And it says that God's kindness, the Bible says God's kindness leads us towards repentance. And I didn't smell sulfur, and I wasn't afraid of hell. That's not what made me understand who God was. It's that I felt the opposite. I understood he loved me. He valued me, that I have this thumbprint that's the only one like it on the planet. I'm unique to him. And it just freaked me out. And so far, it's been like 30 years. I'm still freaked out. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
love is something that just expands and expands and expands, doesn't it? There's no boundaries or end to it.
And it's transforming. That's, Jesus said to love your enemies. And why? Because it changes people. It changes you. It changes them. It's interesting. We need that in this day and age. So, and our relationships are everything, Gary. That was one thing I did want to mention. To me, that's the most valuable thing in my life is our relationships. If you think about it, it's the only thing we take into eternity, is that we'll know and be known, the Bible says. So we take those relationships with us. And I tell people all the time, I've never seen a U-Haul behind a hearse.
Yeah.
So,
You're
so
not
that's what I value myself by my relationships. I look at those relationships, and that's what I put my effort and time into. So, yeah.
Yeah, what did you have any struggles during your time of being a youth minister? Any challenges?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we struggles as in with what? What are you
With
thinking?
Well, with anything, whether it's within you or even with people in the church.
Yeah. Well, when I first got back, several of the people in the church that knew me, how I was, were not very supportive of me, being around, especially being around any young people. And that didn't happen right away, but they were pretty skeptical about the transformation that had happened, and it took time. So that was a bit of a struggle. And then, I felt isolated a lot because I was a certain age, and that age group was usually all in the bars, and I didn't go to the bars. And so there was 4 or 5 of us that kind of banded together and did things together and had fun together, that were in the same, 20 to 30-year-old age group kind of a thing. But there wasn't that many back then. Most of that age group were off to college or military or just moved, so I was lonely for a long time, and it was only when a friend came alongside me and said, Clint, your life can change overnight, which it did when I met my wife, because she already had 4 kids. So I went from being completely single to having 4 kids and a wife. But he had told me this powerful thing. He said, you need to enjoy the season of your life that you're in right now, because when it changes, it'll change forever. And I've carried that with me. So every season of my life I'm in, I don't look to other people that have it better off. I don't want or wish away things. I say, hey, this is where I am right now, and I enjoy it. I say, gosh, I've got this and that going on, and I'm thankful for it. I think I tease because I don't feel like I told you, my relationships are how I measure myself. And I have a lot of really good friends. And for me, I've always considered myself kind of mediocre, and I tease my kids about it too. I tease my son Brian because he's an athlete. He plays football, but he wasn't NFL material. He was college, and he got offers to play professionally, but not in the NFL. And I teased him that he got the McClennan gene, that we're just kind of mediocre, you know. And I teased and I'd said, hey, we celebrate mediocrity here, you know. And I never really felt like I'm anything great, Gary. It's just by grace I seem to fall into things, and God directs me. And I can't tell you that I have this brilliant mind that leads me from place to place, but God leads me from place to place. And I'm amazed at my life. I'm just humbled by how full and rich my life really is, you know. But I think, you know, I visit a lot of elderly people. In fact, I'm going to visit your mom this next week. I'm committed to it. I said, I want to hunt her down and go say hi to her. So I'll do that this next week and keep you posted. But I visit a lot of elderly people, and, you know, they're amazing. I mean, they are amazing. The stories they tell, the life they've lived, everything. But what I've kind of come to is everyone's fear in life, and with them, I see it as well, is there's this fear of being irrelevant, either becoming irrelevant if you're a big shot, um, or or just being irrelevant. And especially in God's economy, there's no small people and no small places. If we do the thing that God asks us to do, our calling, what we feel like we were put on this planet to do, then it doesn't matter if you were Billy Graham that preached to millions of people, or you were the one visiting elderly people, you know, in their homes. That when you stand before God, he's going to say, well done, good and faithful servant. And so I think when we wrap our mind around that, you know, not to measure ourselves by other people, especially because usually we see their best foot forward, you know. And I hear that a lot. You know, people generally, they'll complain, so and so has it better than me, and so has it better than me. And I tell them, well, turn around and look the other way. There's so many more people that are worse off, and we don't take the time to look backwards like that, you know. Or they'll talk about the grass being greener on the other side of the fence, and I said, well, why don't you stop and water your grass? You know, it's things like that. So I just feel I feel amazed at the wisdom that God gives us when we ask him for it, and he shows us what he values and what's important to him. And yeah, those are just some of the things I think about a lot, you know. But I feel like my greatest achievement on this planet is my friendships, my kids and my friendships, you know. So yeah.
Yeah, having friends and valuing them deeply, and you watch their lives change simply
Yeah.
through that.
Yeah.
And it's just fantastic to watch the change in you and in someone else when you just value them because they're a human being.
Yeah. That's it. You know, I think of that. One of my good friends is a multi-billionaire. I think he's worth about 4 billion right now. And I get to spend quite a bit of time with him. The COVID thing, he's kind of quarantined in Hawaii right now, but we were over there last spring and spent a few weeks with him there. And he's such an amazing, humble guy. And he built this empire in the fish processing industry. He owns Trident Seafoods, and Chuck is his name, and he is the most humble guy. And he will ask me, and you're thinking all the balls that guy juggles all the time, running this huge corporation that has a footprint all over the world. And he'll remember something. He'll say, hey, how's Brian's shoulder healing up? He had that injury a few months ago. He cares. He thinks about that kind of a thing. And just through, you know, a set of really funny circumstances, we ended up meeting, and we just have a really close friendship, and I'm thankful for that. And he's taught me so much, you know, just watching him. And yeah, that's what it's about. It's you know, his employees are family, all of them. Last time I was down visiting him, we drove an hour, 2 hours away to one of their big plants because a guy was retiring that had been there 20 some years, 30 years actually. And he walked in there and it was like cheek to cheek hug with the people on the processing line. And, you know, I mean, he knew everybody by name in this plant. And you're thinking this is one of hundreds, you know, of plants that he owns. But that's what he does. He spends all of his time visiting those plants, you know, and it's pretty amazing. So, and I think, you know, he's done it right all the way through, and he's successful because of that. I think God, you know, he walks with God closely, and God has blessed his life because of it. So pretty amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I know a couple people that are, I don't know if they're billionaires, but that have been extremely successful, and I can see why, because
Yeah.
they don't value money. In fact, several of them, you wouldn't even know they have money. There's one guy that I know here in town, and he dresses almost like he's a hobo.
Yeah. There's
And
some in Ketchikan like that.
yeah, he wears old clothes, and he one of his trucks is really old, but it just looks like it was dragged out of a barn on a farm somewhere.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's had a haircut in years, and that's
Yeah.
the way he dresses, and that's the way he talks, and he talks slow like a Texas farmer. But once you sit
Yeah.
down and start talking to him, you just start being amazed. You think, wow,
Yeah.
this guy has a story. He values life, he values people, and
Yeah.
it just starts coming out of him. But unless you really get to know him, you just wouldn't know all the things that he's done, and how much value he places on life.
Yeah, that's it. Yep. Yeah, that's an amazing thing. Valuing people, very important.
Especially right now, because during all this lockdown stuff and people
Yeah.
losing their jobs, there's a lot of people who are lonely, and suicide rates have gone up
Yeah.
in the US and in other countries. And so I would just encourage any listener to recognize that if you're feeling lonely, one of the ways not to feel lonely is to reach out to someone else who's
Yeah.
lonely, and
Exactly.
to take a risk, live life in a greater way, and reach out to someone who you think might be lonely, or that you don't
Yeah.
even know. Just be friendly and talk to someone, and that opens up new aspects to your life. And
Yeah.
um,
Well, and that's my goal, to live selfless. You know, and it's not in a way that's unhealthy to say, you know, I'm, you know, I make sacrifices for other people and stuff. That's it's, you know, if you go to certain people are going to tell you, you know, well, you have to do for you first, and, you know, or you have to love yourself first. I've heard that for years. And, you know, I think when you live that purpose that you have, that God has for you, there's nothing more amazing than when you're fulfilling what it is he's called you to do, whatever that means. And it doesn't mean you're a pastor. It doesn't have to mean you're a missionary. It could mean you are that light, that salt at your office, wherever you work. And when you're fulfilling God's purpose, that's when you truly feel, you know, like you're doing what you're designed to do, you know. One of my cars, it's really funny. I have this Porsche here in town that I haven't, my wife teases me, I haven't even driven it in like 10 years because I'm afraid I'll lose my license. But anyway, it set the world land speed record for, you know, a decade, for a production car. And it's so out of place here in town. When I drive it, it kind of stumbles and staggers along because it wants to go 150 miles an hour all day long, you know. But and it's not that fun to drive here, and it doesn't sound good, because it's not doing what it's made to do, what it was built to do. And I think for humans, for us, we do the same thing. We plug along, we end up just doing the bare minimum, and it weighs on us over time, to the point where um, we start having issues in our life because of it. And um, and we don't understand why. And the fix is very simple. Wake up tomorrow, do what it is that God has for you. Don't look for the big huge thing. It's not the destination, it's the journey. That's what I'm discovering. It's the journey. So, and I believe that, and that's what I make it my ambition to live. And I'm not telling you I'm perfect, because those people that know me know I am not perfect. I'm far from perfect, but I want to be. And I'm a lot different than I used to be. and I'm that work in progress. I was reading today in reading my Bible today in Hebrews chapter 11, and we call that God's Hall of Fame. And he talks a lot about the faithful men and women of through the ages that served him. And it's pretty amazing because you see everything from shepherds to warriors to prostitutes to everything. And they made it in God's Hall of Fame because they did the thing that God had for them to do, serving him. And think about that. I'm humbled when I think about that, because how could turning a wrench and fixing a car at a school with a bunch of kids, how could I be fulfilling that plan that God has for me? Well, that's what it is right now, Gary. So that's what I do, and I look for opportunities to encourage them in the meantime. And like you said, especially at this time with the COVID stuff that's happening, these kids are in a really tough space. They're tired of their video games. They're tired of that. When they hear that they have to stay home from school, that used to be a thing that was like, all right, a 2-week vacation. Now they're sick of it. They don't want to be at home. They want to be, socializing with friends and doing things that young people do. So that's been hard for me to watch them miss out on different milestones in their lives that you and I got to experience, but at the same time, we could be there to encourage them. And I do that a lot. So, and again, it's a humbling thing that God has me there right now, so, yeah.
So to live a life where you're fulfilling your purpose, is that a risky thing?
I think so. Yeah, I think it can be. Yeah. But I think it's that measured risk, I think risk is something you can measure. It says here in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, faith is the confidence that what we hope for will actually happen. It gives us assurance about things we cannot see. And so, yeah, it does take courage. I think to live your life successfully, you have to be courageous. And remember, courage is bravery in spite of fear. You could still be afraid, but there's this bravery that goes along with it, and you carry it out anyway. And there's some courageous people. I'll tell you, hopefully we could put this link in. I don't know if you guys have watched that Mandy Harvey. I was watching her. Every time I watch that on YouTube, I just cry. She was the deaf person that went on YouTube, or went on America's Got Talent. She's deaf, Gary. And she was in a music program at college to be a singer. And she ended up with an infection, and her tissue was diminishing or something. And she's deaf, but she still figured out how to hear the beat, how to train her voice, even though she can't hear it, with pitch and everything. And she's an amazing singer. So we'll have to put that link on for people to watch that on YouTube, Mandy Harvey, because there's her original audition, and then there's her in like doing a whole concert. And it's just amazing. But there's a person that overcame huge obstacles. And you talk about risk and danger, and just obviously there's a high opportunity she's not going to make it, and it's going to be a letdown, but she did it anyway. So we need to be courageous people. This world needs us to be courageous. And again, no small people, no small places. It could take just as much courage calling someone on the phone saying, hey, can I visit with you? And they're like, why are you calling me? Well, I know you're sitting at home alone. So am I. Let's visit, And so courage can be measured in a lot of different ways. I think of things I've done. I've been in a few rescue situations where I put my life at risk to save someone else. And Gary, those are actually pretty easy to do. That split second decision to get in harm's way to grab someone or to do something. It wasn't hard for me to do. Even one of them was a complete stranger, but I think about it, to carry out and do what God has for us, there's always risk. There always has to be faith. The Bible says without faith, we can't please God. So there has to be that point where, Lord, I can't do this on my own. You're going to have to help me, or you're going to have to come through on this. And I have a lot of testimonies about how I've seen the miraculous happen, with situations that could have been really a terrible thing, but I trusted God. I believed it's what he had, and he followed through with his part of it. So yeah, it is risky.
I found the greatest successes that I've had in life, and when I say success, it has nothing to do with financial. The success came simply because something rose in my heart to do something. It was there, like, oh, I think I should do that, and I stepped out and did it,
Yeah.
and had in the middle of the fear. There have been times I was very fearful and uncertain about doing something, but taking that bold step and doing it, it opened up so many new things in my life that where I'm sitting at now is so shock. It surprises me to
Yeah.
look at where I am now. I'm doing a podcast now. I don't know
Right
if you remember this. Somebody in our class is going to remember this. When we were seniors, they handed out a piece of paper that we could vote for people in our class, like to be who was to be the most successful. And there were other things on there. I don't know if you remember that piece of paper,
I do.
but
Yeah.
I remember it. I was voted most shy.
Yeah.
I was
Wow.
voted most shy. I was a very shy, insecure person for very long part of my life. Quiet.
Well,
I
I
didn't
think the
talk.
only reason I got to know you is we had mutual friends. We had lunch down at the Hendricks house every day. Can you
Yes.
imagine how much money his parents must have spent on food?
Oh,
Because there's what, 5, 6 hungry teenagers heading down the hill every day for lunch.
and we
God
could
bless them.
we could pack it in too.
Oh man, I feel bad.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, you were shy.
Yeah.
So I wonder who everyone voted for. We had a lot of really dynamic people, didn't we, in our class?
We did.
So
Yeah.
it's
I'm
interesting.
I'm gonna reach out to more of them. I wanna do this with more members of our class.
I thought it'd be fun to dialogue with enough of them to put together a book just telling this is what Gary Hartley did after graduation. He did this and then this and then this. And it'd just be fascinating to see all the different things that all of us did. And you think about it, it was a lifetime ago, but really feels like a moment ago.
Mhm.
And I often think, why is high school such a big deal? I think about that because it's still true. The students that are there now, and you know what I think it is, Gary? It's the one intersecting place in life where everyone is kind of at an equal. What's expected of you isn't millions of dollars and big houses and this and that. It's go to school, go to your classes, get passing grades. That's really what's expected of you in high school. And sure, there's some cliques and other things going on, but it's the one time in life where we're all kind of on this level playground, eye to eye with each other, and our peer group is this big group of people, and we're experiencing life for the very first time. Everything we did was the first time we ever did this, and the first time we did that. Some of it was the last time, obviously. Stupid stuff. Oh man, but yeah, yeah, that's amazing. It would be fun to see where everyone is and what they're doing.
I'm
So
working on it. You're the second one. I got another one
good.
next week. So I'm just going to keep on
Nice.
going and try to
Good.
get as many as I can from our
Good
class and let them
times.
tell their stories.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, I do
Yeah.
too.
Well, I feel blessed to get to live here still. I mean, we've gotten the most rain we've ever gotten. I mean, we broke a record last month, or maybe it was the month before. It just rained and rained and rained and rained. But I still love it here. I still feel every time I look around, I'm just in awe. And I've lived in a few other places, but I love it here. So I'm thankful that I get to live here still. And when people tell me, how could you stand living on such a small island? Don't you get sick of everyone? And I said, well, it's like this. If you're a good person, then it's like you're with your friends. Everywhere you go, you see your friends. I said, but if you're not a good person, you'd burn those bridges would burn pretty quick and you'd have nowhere. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying where I am in my life right now. And like I said, I value my relationships and I feel like I'm just blessed beyond measure at all the great friends I have and people in my life, and I still feel relevant. So that's a good thing. So
Yeah, that's important in life. Wow.
yeah.
Well, Clint, I am just thrilled that you came on and had a
Well,
conversation with me. I had to So that I got to make a little point here. So you've got that was your daughter's pottery cup that you were
Oh
drinking out
yeah.
of there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sitting in her little studio because there was people coming and going, and I just didn't want to uh, have us distracted. So she's quite the artist. I'm drinking out of one of her mugs that she made me, and several people have seen that design. And then she does all these amazing stencil things on them in different colors, and you can see all the different ones behind us. And so we'll give a shout out to her. It's ceramic akceramics.com, and she actually has an online store. And so you see behind me, there's bowls and pitchers and mugs and cups and all kinds of, she's always trying something new. So yeah, you could take a look. She doesn't have a lot on there right now. She's going to be home here in another few weeks, and she's going to boil up a whole nother batch just in time for Christmas. So, but yeah, I'm hanging out in her little ceramic studio here.
Excellent. Well,
Yeah,
I'll post that
yeah,
in the comments when
that'd be
I
fun.
do this podcast and the video, and I'll take
Yeah,
a look at it myself.
yeah, you need to. It's good.
All
But
right.
yeah, and I'm really grateful we got to hook up again when you were home a few months ago, and I love, keep up the good work. Your podcasts are always really interesting, and I've really enjoyed them. So yeah, good
Well, so
job.
do I. Well, Clint, blessings to you, and I really appreciate your friendship and everything that you've helped me with in my life. Just to
Yeah,
be encouraging and to hear stories from other people about you when I talk to them up there.
good, good stuff.
All right, brother.
All right,
We'll talk to you again soon. And
thanks.
all right, Clint. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye.